More on this now. France 24's Kethevane Gorjestani, our international affairs editor, joins me on set. Hi, Kethevane. So this, of course, is not the first meeting between Western leaders since the start of the war 3 years ago, but the world looks a lot different now. So what are the stakes then this time around?
Well, the stakes definitely have been raised following what happened in the Oval Office on Friday. With the U.S. support now in doubt, it's more important than ever for these leaders to help Ukraine. And it's also more important than ever for the European leaders in that group to increase European defenses. There are two big questions that are going to be put to these leaders. One is, can the relationship between Ukraine and the United States be salvaged? The likes of Giorgia Meloni, of Andrzej Duda, of Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, all of them have relatively good relations with both Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump. And so they have expressed this willingness of trying to patch things up, trying to be the bridge between Ukraine and the United States. This is one of those questions. The other big question is, can Europe still count on the United States going forward? And on that question, it seems that there's not full agreement among Europeans. Some of them, like the German foreign minister, Baerbock, as well as the possible or likely future chancellor, Friedrich Merz, as well as the likes of the Czech foreign minister, the EU diplomacy chief. They've all basically answered that question saying, no, we can no longer count on the United States. We have to go it alone. We have to move on and figure things out on our own. Others are sort of in the middle, insisting that, yes, the European has to move on in a way and do more on its own, like Emmanuel Macron, like Keir Starmer, but also that the U.S. is still very much needed. And that was sort of the message of Giorgia Meloni when she said that the West needed to remain united, including with the United States. One issue that is important to note, talking about this unity, especially among European, is the absence of the three Baltic state leaders who were not invited. There was a phone call with Keir Starmer before this big in-person meeting started, but it is interesting because they are, as far as relatively to GDP, some of the biggest contributors to military aid to the Ukrainians, the highest defense spenders within NATO coming from Europe. And there are also just geographically at the forefront of NATO's eastern flank facing Russia. And so they have not publicly said anything, but privately there is some little bit of frustration there to be left aside in such a key moment, as Keir Starmer said.
So France and the UK, Kethevane, are arguably taking the lead. We saw that in the family photo there. They're really at the front of all of the images we're seeing of this summit. That's perhaps not an accident. It's because they are the ones that are reportedly proposing a peace plan to potentially be presented to the White House. So what more do we know about that possible plan?
Well, that's how Keir Starmer presented it. He said that the UK was working with France and Ukraine and possibly one or two more countries, he said, without giving further details, on a plan to stop the fighting. And then once they have that plan, they will present it to the United States. He discussed this plan, not in much detail, but he gave three essentials in his eyes for a successful deal. One was to arm Ukraine so that they are in a position of force and a position of strength when they sort of negotiate a possible ceasefire deal. The UK just announced that they were giving nearly $3 billion in loans to support Ukraine in the production of more weapons, of defense capabilities. There's this idea that European forces need to guarantee this ceasefire. And so we're back to that UK-France plan of about 30,000 troops that would not be on the sort of ceasefire line, but defending the critical infrastructure, their presence there. This is something that not all Europeans are agreeing to. For example, the Italians or the Poles have said, we're not sending any forces in Ukraine. And that's why Keir Starmer has said we need to to move fast. So we are going to start with a coalition of the willing, he said. So he's not waiting for all Europeans to agree to that. They're starting with those who agree to it, like the French, like the Brits, and possibly a couple of others. And finally, the most essential of all in those 3 points is the U.S. Backstop that could take the form of air cover, intelligence sharing, surveillance, all of that to prevent Putin from breaking a possible ceasefire down the road. The lack of depth of weapons, of forces, of logistics for European forces compared to Russia, but also compared to the U.S., is very clear. And both Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, as well as Volodymyr Zelensky, have all insisted that this can only work if there is some sort of U.S. support to that European force. And so that will be one of the key elements going forward, is trying to bring back Donald Trump, but also try to convince him that the U.S. needs to participate in some way. 3 essentials that look very, very complicated to achieve, but that is what they're trying to do.
A lot of ifs, a lot of wishful thinking thus far. Kethevane, we'll see what comes out of this summit then. We're hoping to hear from those leaders after those preliminary meetings, and we'll be following that here on France 24. Thank you.